I can't breathe. The hot stage lights burn down on my wrinkled face. 500 pairs of eyes pierce through me. Joan Wallace, 67 years old. I've sung on this stage for decades, but my hands have never trembled like this. The microphone feels like ice. Front row center, my husband Clem sits watching. At 69, he wears that proud smile, but I know how hollow it is. Beside him, our choir conductor Dolores, 45 and elegant, offers an encouraging nod. They were together again last night, I'm certain. Our choir's $30,000 charity fund already converted to cruise tickets. Evidence flashes through my mind. Forged receipts, her pearl earring on our nightstand, deleted messages I recovered. 45 years of marriage destroyed. The piano begins playing My Eternal Vow. But tonight, this isn't a love song. The lyrics I've secretly rewritten will be their destruction. This is the moment everything changes. Let me tell you how we arrived here. The autumn wind rattled the kitchen windows as Joan Wallace stirred her morning coffee, watching her husband Clem pretend to read the newspaper. At 67, she'd learned to recognize when he was hiding something. His eyes hadn't moved across the page in 5 minutes.
The choir's annual charity concert is coming up next month. Agnes says we've already raised $15,000.
Clem's newspaper rustled.
That's wonderful, dear. Dolores must be doing something right.
There it was again. That slight lift in his voice when he mentioned their new conductor. Joan had noticed it for weeks now. The way his whole demeanor changed when Dolores McBride entered any conversation. She took a slow sip of coffee, studying the man she'd been married to for 45 years. His thick fingers drummed against the table, a nervous habit she knew well.
You've been helping with the finances quite a bit lately. I barely see you anymore.
Well, someone needs to keep those books straight. Dolores isn't exactly a numbers person.
But Dolores was a numbers person. Joan had seen her expertise firsthand when she'd outlined the choir's 5-year budget plan. The lies settled between them like a stone. Later that morning at rehearsal, Joan took her usual spot in the alto section. The community center's acoustics wrapped around them like a warm embrace, 50 voices blending in practiced harmony. Dolores stood at the podium, her auburn hair catching the fluorescent lights. At 45, she commanded the room with an energy that made Joan feel every one of her 67 years.
Altos, let's take it from measure 32. Joan, would you lead us in?
Joan's voice rose clear and strong, the notes flowing from decades of practice. Music had always been her sanctuary, the place where everything made sense. But today, something felt different. Dolores kept glancing toward the door, checking her phone between pieces.
You sounded beautiful today,
Bernice Crawford whispered during their break. At 70, Joan's oldest friend still had sharp eyes behind her wire-rimmed glasses.
though I have to say, our conductor seems distracted.
She's been like that for weeks, probably stressed about the concert.
Perhaps. Or perhaps it's something else entirely.
Bernice pulled out a folder, her role as choir treasurer giving her access to all their financial records.
Joan, I need to show you something. These numbers from last month's fundraiser don't add up. We should have $23,000 in the account, but there's only $17,000 showing.
Joan studied the ledger, her stomach tightening. $6,000. Not a fortune, but for their small choir, it represented months of bake sales and car washes.
Have you talked to Clem about this? He's been handling the deposits.
I tried calling him yesterday. He said he'd look into it.
The rehearsal resumed, but Joan couldn't focus. She watched Dolores conduct, noting how her wedding ring caught the light. When had she started wearing it on her right hand instead of her left? Small details that meant nothing on their own, but together painted a picture Joan didn't want to see. That evening, Joan arrived home earlier than expected. Clem's car was in the driveway, but the house felt empty. She found him in his study. quickly closing his laptop as she entered.
Working on the choir finances?
Just wrapping up. Nothing important.
He stood too quickly, knocking over a glass of water. As they both reached for the towels, Joan noticed a receipt flutter to the floor. Le Bernardin, the French restaurant downtown. The date was last Tuesday, when he'd supposedly been at his brother's house. The total made her breath catch. $300.
Planning to take me somewhere special?
She kept her voice light, holding up the receipt.
Oh, that. Business dinner with some potential choir donors. Dolores thought it would help loosen their wallets.
Another lie. Joan knew every major donor to their choir, had sung at their weddings and funerals for decades. None of them would require a French restaurant to open their checkbooks. That night, as Clem snored beside her, Joan lay awake staring at the ceiling. 45 years of marriage, and she'd never doubted him before. Not when money was tight after his business failed. Not during his mother's long illness. Not even during his midlife crisis when he'd bought that ridiculous motorcycle. But now, in their supposed golden years, something was shifting beneath the foundation of their life together. The next morning brought an unexpected discovery. Joan was changing the bed sheets when something glinted on Clem's nightstand. A pearl earring. Not hers. She'd never owned pearls. Claimed they made her look old. This was delicate, expensive, the kind of jewelry a younger woman would wear. The kind Dolores had worn to last week's rehearsal. Joan sat on the edge of the bed, the earring cold in her palm. Outside, she heard Clem's car starting, heading out for another financial meeting with Dolores. The earring seemed to pulse with significance, a small bomb that could destroy everything she'd built. Her phone buzzed, a text from Bernice. Found more discrepancies. Can we talk? Joan slipped the earring into her pocket and typed back. Come over, Clem's out. 20 minutes later, Bernice sat at Joan's kitchen table, spreading out bank statements and receipts like evidence in a crime scene.
It's not just the $6,000 from last month. Look here, $3,000 withdrawn 2 weeks ago. Another $1,500 the week before that. All authorized by Clem.
Maybe there were legitimate expenses.
Joan, I've been treasurer for 15 years. These aren't normal patterns. And look at this.
She pulled out a credit card statement, one that should have been filed with the choir's records but had been hidden in a separate folder.
Caribbean Cruise Lines. 2 tickets. $30,000 for a luxury suite, departing in 6 weeks.
The room seemed to tilt. Joan gripped the table edge, her knuckles white.
That's our entire tour fund. We were going to take the choir to compete in Nashville.
I know, Joan, I'm so sorry, but you needed to see this.
Joan pulled out the pearl earring, setting it on the table between them. Bernice's eyes widened.
Is that...
I found it on Clem's nightstand. It's Dolores's. I saw her wearing the pair at rehearsal.
The two women sat in silence, the weight of betrayal settling over them like dust. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, the sound sharp in the quiet morning.
What are you going to do?
Joan stood, walking to the window. She could see her garden, the roses she'd tended for decades now, browning at the edges as autumn advanced. Everything she'd cultivated, everything she'd believed in, was dying.
I don't know. Part of me wants to pretend I never found out. Go on like nothing's changed.
But everything has changed.
Yes, everything has changed.
She turned from the window, and Bernice saw something new in her friend's face. Not just hurt or anger, but something colder, more calculated.
The charity concert is in 4 weeks. I've been assigned the solo for my eternal vow.
Joan, you're not thinking...
I'm thinking that Clem and Dolores believe they've gotten away with it. They think I'm just a foolish old woman who won't notice $30,000 missing, who won't see the lipstick on his collar or smell her perfume in our bed.
Joan picked up the pearl earring, holding it to the light.
They're wrong. And at that concert, in front of everyone we know, they're going to learn just how wrong they are.
Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the morning sky had been clear just moments before. Change was coming, whether they were ready or not. 3 days had passed since Joan discovered the pearl earring. 3 days of watching Clem eat breakfast, kiss her cheek, and leave for his meetings. 3 days of pretending her world hadn't shattered. The October rain drummed against the windows as she sat at her piano, fingers moving across keys she'd played for 50 years. The doorbell interrupted her practice. Through the peephole, she saw Dolores McBride standing under a designer umbrella, looking perfectly composed despite the weather.
Joan, I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to discuss your solo for the concert.
Joan let her in, noting the subtle perfume, the same scent that lingered on Clem's jacket. Dolores settled into the living room chair, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. The missing pearl earrings partner dangled from her left ear.
My eternal vow is such a beautiful piece. But I've been thinking, perhaps something more upbeat would suit the charity theme better. Maybe celebration of life?
I've been practicing the vow for weeks. It means something special to me.
Of course, but we want to inspire donations, not make people weepy. Trust me, Joan. I know what works with audiences.
The condescension in her voice made Joan's jaw clench. This woman, who was stealing both her husband and her choir's future, dared to patronize her.
I'll consider it. Would you like some tea?
In the kitchen, Joan's hands shook as she filled the kettle. Through the doorway, she watched Dolores typing on her phone, smiling at the screen. A message from Clem, no doubt. When Joan returned with the tea, Dolores had moved to the piano, running her fingers along the family photos displayed there.
You and Clem have built such a lovely life together. 45 years. That's quite an accomplishment these days.
Yes, it is.
Though I imagine it must get routine after all that time. The same conversations, the same habits. Some couples find it refreshing to explore new interests separately.
The audacity took Joan's breath away. This woman was actually trying to justify the affair to her face.
Clem and I have always valued loyalty above novelty.
How quaint.
Dolores set down her untouched tea and stood.
Think about the song change, won't you? The concert's success depends on making the right choices.
After she left, Joan sat at the piano, rage burning through her veins. She pulled out the sheet music for My Eternal Vow and began writing new lyrics in the margins. Each line became a weapon, each verse a revelation. That evening, Bernice arrived with a box of documents and a grim expression.
I've been doing more digging. It's worse than we thought.
She spread papers across the dining table, bank statements, forged receipts, false vendor invoices.
They've taken almost $50,000 total. Not just from the tour fund, but from the scholarship program, the youth outreach, even the memorial fund for deceased members.
The memorial fund? That money was meant for flowers, for families.
I know, look at this.
She pulled out a real estate listing, a condo in Miami with a pending offer of $48,000. The buyer's agent was listed as D. McBride.
They're not just taking a cruise, they're setting up a new life.
Joan stared at the listing. Ocean views, 2 bedrooms, a fresh start built on stolen dreams.
We need more proof, something undeniable.
What did you have in mind?
Joan walked to Clem's study, Bernice following. The laptop sat closed on his desk. Joan had watched him type his password enough times. Their anniversary date, how ironic. The computer opened to his email. Joan's stomach turned as she read the subject lines. Can't wait. Last night was incredible. Only 3 more weeks.
Print everything?
While Bernice worked, Joan found Clem's briefcase. Inside, tucked between insurance papers, were the cruise tickets, the reservation confirmation, the condo contract, and a letter, handwritten in Dolores's flowing script. Joan read it aloud, her voice steady despite the pain.
My darling Clem, soon we'll be free from this suffocating small town. No more pretending to care about their petty concerns, their amateur voices. The money we've secured will give us the life we deserve. Joan will never know what hit her.
My God, the cruelty.
She's right about one thing. I never saw it coming.
Footsteps sounded on the porch. Clem's key turned in the lock.
What do we do?
We give him exactly what he expects.
Joan slipped the letter back, closed the briefcase, and met Clem in the hallway with a smile.
Hello, dear. Bernice and I were just having tea. How was your meeting?
Productive, very productive.
He kissed her cheek, the gesture hollow as a bell. Joan caught Bernice's eye over his shoulder, a silent message passing between them. The next week passed in a strange dance of deception. Joan played the devoted wife while secretly documenting everything. She photographed receipts, recorded conversations, gathered evidence with the methodical precision she'd once applied to lesson planning. At choir practice, she watched Clem and Dolores exchange glances, little touches they thought no one noticed, but others were beginning to see. Luella Hancock, the choir's eldest member at 73, pulled Joan aside during break.
Something's not right with our finances. I've been in this choir for 30 years, and we've never canceled so many programs.
Have you mentioned this to anyone else?
Not yet. But if our conductor and treasurer can't explain where the money's going, I will.
That night, Joan worked on her song. The original lyrics of Eternal Love transformed into something else entirely. She tested each phrase at the piano, making sure the new words fit the familiar melody perfectly. Anyone listening would hear the tune they expected, but the message would be devastatingly different. Clem emerged from his study, drawn by the music.
Practicing for the concert. You sound beautiful.
I want it to be perfect. This might be my last solo.
Don't say that. You've got years of singing left.
He placed his hands on her shoulders, and she fought not to recoil. How many times had those hands touched Dolores?
Clem, what would you do if you discovered someone had betrayed you? Someone you trusted completely?
His hands stiffened.
Why would you ask that?
Oh, it's just the theme of this song. Eternal vows, trust, promises. It makes one think.
Well, I suppose forgiveness is always possible. People make mistakes.
Some mistakes are harder to forgive than others.
She turned on the bench to face him, studying the face she'd loved for nearly half a century. When had it become a stranger's face?
The concert's in 2 weeks. Will you be there?
Of course, front row as always.
Good. I want you to have the best possible view.
That weekend, Joan met Bernice and an unexpected guest at a coffee shop downtown. Mervyn Taggart, the local newspaper's veteran reporter, sat with a recorder and notebook.
Bernice has told me the basics, but I need documentation. This is a serious accusation against prominent community members.
Joan slid a folder across the table. Everything was there. Bank statements, emails, photos, the fraudulent documents.
This is comprehensive. When do you want the story to run?
The morning after the concert, not a moment before.
That's cutting it close. What if they leave town?
They won't. They need to maintain appearances until the cruise, and I have something special planned for the concert itself.
Joan, are you sure about this? Once it's public...
Once it's public, everyone will know who they really are. That's the point.
As they left the coffee shop, Joan noticed Dolores's car parked outside the bank. Through the window, she could see her at the teller, probably making another withdrawal. The woman had no idea her time was running out. That night, alone in her bedroom while Clem worked late, or so he claimed, Joan made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. She called her lawyer.
I need to discuss divorce proceedings, and I need to protect my assets immediately.
The words felt foreign in her mouth, but necessary. Like the new lyrics she'd written. Like the performance she was about to give. Everything foreign but necessary. Painful but required. The choir concert was in 13 days. 13 days to perfect her song, her evidence, her revenge. The rain had stopped, and through her window, Joan could see stars emerging from behind the clouds. Soon, everything hidden would be revealed. The community center's parking lot was fuller than usual for a Thursday evening rehearsal. Joan counted 15 cars, including Clem's sedan parked conspicuously next to Dolores's red convertible. She sat in her own car for a moment, reviewing the lyrics she'd hidden in her regular sheet music. Tonight would be her first full run-through of the altered version. Inside, the choir members were already warming up. Agnes Peterson, one of the newer sopranos, waved Joan over.
Joan, have you heard? Someone's been asking questions about the choir's finances. A reporter from the Gazette called me yesterday.
Really? What did they want to know?
Something about discrepancies in our fundraising reports. I told them to talk to Clem, of course.
Joan glanced at her husband, who was bent over a ledger with Dolores, their heads close together. Neither had noticed her arrival.
I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. These things happen.
She took her place with the altos, pulling out her music folder. Hidden between the pages of hymns and show tunes were her new lyrics, written in her careful teacher's handwriting. Bernice, sitting beside her, gave a subtle nod.
Everyone, attention please. We have just 10 days until the concert. Tonight, we're running the full program. Joan, are you ready for your solo?
More ready than you know.
Wonderful. Though I still think Celebration of Life would be more appropriate.
My eternal vow is perfect for the occasion, trust me.
Something in Joan's tone made Dolores pause. For a moment, the two women locked eyes, and Joan saw a flicker of uncertainty in the younger woman's gaze. Then Dolores smiled her practiced smile and turned to the choir.
Let's begin with River of Jordan, then move through the program.
The rehearsal progressed smoothly until Joan's solo. As the pianist played the introduction, she stood, feeling every eye in the room on her. She began with the original lyrics, her voice warm and familiar. But as she reached the second verse, she let one altered line slip through.
Trust was a currency so easily spent.
Clem's head snapped up from his ledger. Dolores frowned, checking her copy of the music. Joan continued with the original words, as if nothing had happened.
Joan, that's not the correct lyric.
Oh, isn't it? I must have misremembered. The words all blur together after a while.
She saw Clem and Dolores exchange a glance. Good. Let them wonder. After rehearsal, Joan lingered, organizing sheet music while others filed out. Luella Hancock approached, her weathered face stern.
That was interesting what you did with the lyrics.
A simple mistake.
I've known you for 40 years, Joan Wallace. You don't make simple mistakes. And I've been watching our conductor and treasurer. Something's going on.
Joan met the older woman's sharp gaze.
If you're right, it will all come out soon enough.
At the concert?
Perhaps. Will you be there?
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
That night, Clem came home late, smelling of wine and Dolores's perfume. Joan pretended to be asleep as he slipped into bed, but she lay awake listening to his breathing, wondering when it had become the sound of a stranger. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Joan was working in her garden when a young woman appeared at the gate. She looked to be in her early 30s, with Dolores's auburn hair but softer features. Mrs. Wallace, I'm Sarah McBride. Dolores is my sister. Joan's pruning shears stilled.
I didn't know Dolores had family in town.
I don't live here. I came because I'm worried about her. She's done this before.
Done what before?
Sarah glanced around nervously, then stepped closer.
Attached herself to older men with money, found ways to access funds. It's why she had to leave Cincinnati, and before that, Detroit. I thought she'd changed, but then I heard she was involved with someone here, a married man.
Joan's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady.
Why are you telling me this?
Because in Cincinnati, the wife found out too late. After they'd emptied the accounts and disappeared, the woman lost everything. Her home, her savings, her dignity. I can't let that happen again.
Joan set down her shears and really looked at Sarah. The young woman's eyes were red-rimmed, her hands twisting nervously.
Your sister is planning to leave town soon?
She bought a condo in Miami. I saw the papers in her apartment when I visited last week, and there were cruise tickets. She tried to hide them, but I saw.
Did you see the name on the other ticket?
C. Wallace, that's your husband, isn't it?
Joan nodded, surprised by how little it hurt to hear it confirmed by a stranger.
They've stolen $50,000 from our choir.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop her, but she won't listen to me. She says she deserves this, that she's tired of struggling.
We all struggle. It doesn't give us the right to destroy others.
Sarah pulled out a manila envelope.
These are documents from Cincinnati, police reports, news articles, if you need them for whatever you're planning to do.
How do you know I'm planning anything?
Because you're not crying, you're not screaming, you're standing here calmly discussing your husband's affair with his mistress's sister. That kind of composure means you have a plan.
Joan took the envelope.
The concert is in 9 days. After that, your sister will face consequences for her actions.
Legal consequences?
Among others.
After Sarah left, Joan called Bernice and then Mervyn. The Cincinnati documents added another layer to the story. Dolores McBride was a serial predator, and Clem was just her latest mark. Except Clem wasn't just a victim. He was a willing participant who'd chosen greed over 45 years of marriage. That afternoon, Joan visited her lawyer's office to finalize the divorce papers. They would be served the day after the concert. She also arranged for the locks to be changed on the house and for Clem's access to their joint accounts to be frozen the morning of the performance.
Are you certain about the timing? This could get messy.
Messy is exactly what I want.
The next few days passed in a blur of rehearsals and preparations. Joan perfected her altered lyrics, practicing them alone in the house while Clem was at his meetings. She coordinated with Bernice, who had quietly informed key choir members about the missing funds without revealing the full truth. The groundwork was being laid for maximum impact. 3 days before the concert, Dolores made one last attempt to change Joan's solo. She cornered her after rehearsal, her smile sharp as glass.
Joan, I really must insist. My eternal vow is too somber for a charity event. As musical director, I'm making an executive decision. You'll sing Celebration of Life.
No.
Excuse me?
I said no. I've been with this choir for 40 years. I've earned the right to choose my final solo.
Final solo?
Oh, yes. After the concert, things are going to change dramatically, for all of us.
Dolores's composure cracked slightly.
What exactly are you implying?
I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Change is coming, whether we're ready or not.
She walked past Dolores, then turned back.
By the way, that's a lovely pair of pearl earrings, though I thought you'd lost one.
Dolores's hand flew to her ear, her face paling. Joan smiled and continued walking. That evening, Clem was unusually attentive at dinner, complimenting the pot roast, asking about her day. Joan played along, the perfect wife, one last time.
You seem different lately. More confident.
Do I? Perhaps it's the solo. It's given me something to focus on.
I'm proud of you. Not many women your age would take on such a challenge.
Women your age, as if 67 was ancient, as if she should be grateful for the opportunity to sing while he stole from their community.
Age is just a number, Clem. What matters is what we do with the time we have.
That's very philosophical.
I've had a lot of time to think lately about promises, about trust, about what it means to share a life with someone.
He shifted uncomfortably.
Joan, is everything all right?
Everything is exactly as it should be. We all make choices, and we all face the consequences. Don't you agree?
I suppose so.
Good. I'm glad we understand each other.
She stood to clear the dishes, humming the melody of My Eternal Vow. Behind her, she heard Clem's sharp intake of breath. He recognized the tune, of course. He'd heard her practice it for weeks. But now, perhaps, he heard something different in it. A promise, a threat, a goodbye. 2 days before the concert, everything was in place. The evidence was documented, the reporter ready, the lawyer prepared. Joan stood in front of her mirror, practicing her performance one final time. She wasn't just preparing to sing. She was preparing to destroy 2 people who had betrayed everything she held dear. And she would do it with a smile on her face, and a song in her heart. The morning of the charity concert arrived with unseasonable warmth for late autumn. Joan stood at her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the town she'd called home for 4 decades. Somewhere across town, Clem and Dolores were probably making their final preparations for escape. They had no idea their plans were already destroyed. Her phone buzzed, a text from Bernice. "Everything's ready. Mervyn is in position. The police have been notified." Joan typed back, "Thank you. See you tonight." Clem emerged from the bathroom, freshly shaved and wearing too much cologne.
Big day. Nervous about your solo?
Not at all. I've never been more prepared for anything in my life.
That's my girl. I'll be in the front row cheering you on.
He kissed her cheek, and Joan allowed it one last time. After tonight, he would never touch her again.
Clem, before you go, I wanted to thank you.
Thank me? For what?
For showing me who you really are. It's been educational.
His smile faltered.
Joan, what are you talking about?
You'll understand tonight. Front row seat, remember? You won't want to miss a single word.
She left him standing there, confusion written across his face, and drove to the community center. The parking lot was already filling up. The charity concert was the social event of the season, drawing nearly 500 people from across the county. Inside, the choir members were warming up. Dolores stood at the podium, resplendent in a black evening gown that Joan recognized from the receipts. Purchased with choir funds, naturally.
There you are, Joan. I was beginning to worry. Are you ready?
More than you could possibly imagine.
Dolores's eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could respond, Luella Hancock approached.
The auditorium is packed. Standing room only. This could be our most successful fundraiser ever.
Joan almost laughed at the irony. There would be no funds raised tonight, only truths revealed. As 7 o'clock approached, Joan peeked through the curtains. The auditorium was indeed full. She spotted Mervyn Taggart in the 3rd row, his recorder discreetly placed. 2 uniformed officers stood at the back, trying to blend in. And there, front row center, sat Clem, looking pleased with himself. He kept checking his phone, probably counting down the hours until their flight tomorrow. Bernice appeared at Joan's elbow.
Are you sure you want to do this? Once it starts, there's no going back.
There's already no going back. The moment they stole that first dollar, the moment he brought her into our bed, there was no going back.
The lights dimmed. Dolores took the stage to welcome the audience, her voice smooth and confident. She spoke about the choir's mission, the importance of community support, never mentioning the $50,000 she'd helped steal.
And now, please welcome your Riverside Community Choir.
The curtains opened. The choir filed onto the risers, Joan taking her place with the altos. The first half of the program went smoothly. Gospel hymns, show tunes, a medley of patriotic songs. The audience responded warmly, applauding enthusiastically after each piece. Then came intermission. Joan stood backstage, her altered sheet music in hand. Several choir members approached her.
Joan, we heard rumors about missing money. Is it true?
Just listen to my solo. Everything will become clear.
The lights flickered, signaling the end of intermission. The choir returned to the stage. Dolores addressed the audience again.
For our final piece before the closing hymn, one of our most dedicated members will perform a solo. Please welcome Joan Wallace, singing My Eternal Vow.
The applause was warm as Joan stepped forward. The spotlight found her, hot and bright. She could see Clem in the front row, smiling his empty smile. Dolores stood to the side, baton raised. The pianist played the introduction, those familiar notes that everyone expected. Joan began to sing, her voice clear and strong.
My eternal vow, once sacred and true, now lies in pieces, shattered by you. The promises spoken in our wedding bed are worth less than the receipts you shred.
The pianist fumbled, nearly stopping. Dolores's baton froze in midair. Clem's face went white, but Joan continued, her voice gaining power.
$50,000 stolen with ease from children's scholarships and families' pleas. While you whispered love to another's ear, you robbed the community we held dear.
Gasps rippled through the audience. Someone shouted, "What's happening?" Joan sang on, each verse a precise accusation.
Cruise tickets hidden in a briefcase of lies, Miami condos where deception flies, pearl earrings left on our marital bed, evidence of every word unsaid.
Dolores started toward her, but Luella Hancock and 3 other choir members stepped forward, blocking her path. Clem had half risen from his seat, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish.
Cincinnati, Detroit, the trail of your theft, always moving on when nothing is left. But here in Riverside, your crime meets its end. No more trust to break, no more rules to bend.
Joan pulled out a folder, holding it high for all to see.
Bank statements, emails, your fraud on display. The police are here to take you away. My eternal vow was to love and to hold, but you traded our life for fool's gold.
The final note rang out in the stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. The officers moved forward. Mervin's camera flash went off repeatedly. Audience members shouted questions, accusations, demands for answers. Dolores tried to run, but found her path blocked by choir members. Her composed mask finally cracked completely.
You bitter old woman! You've ruined everything!
No, dear, you ruined everything. I just sang about it.
Clem reached the stage, his face purple with rage.
Joan, how could you? 45 years.
Yes, 45 years. And you threw them away for a younger woman and stolen money. How could you?
The police reached them then. One officer addressed Clem and Dolores.
We need you both to come with us for questioning regarding embezzlement charges.
As they were led away, Joan heard Dolores hiss at Clem.
This is your fault. You said she was too stupid to notice.
Shut up, just shut up.
Their argument continued as they were escorted out, their true selves finally exposed to everyone. Joan stood on the stage, surrounded by her choir family. Bernice hugged her tightly.
That was the bravest thing I've ever seen.
Luella stepped forward, her weathered face showing approval.
I knew you had something planned, but that was magnificent.
Mervin approached, his recorder still running.
Mrs. Wallace, how long have you known about the affair and the embezzlement?
Long enough to gather evidence. Long enough to realize that sometimes the truth needs to be sung, not whispered.
The audience had begun to settle, many pulling out phones to record or share what they'd witnessed. Joan noticed Sarah McBride in the back row, tears streaming down her face. Their eyes met, and Sarah mouthed, "Thank you," before slipping out. The choir president, elderly Harold Morrison, took the microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this unexpected development. Obviously, tonight's fundraiser will be postponed while we sort through this situation. We ask for your patience and continued support of the choir.
Someone from the audience called out.
What about the stolen money?
We will work with authorities to recover what we can. And I can assure you, we will implement new financial oversight to prevent this from ever happening again.
As the audience slowly filed out, Joan remained on stage. The spotlight was off now, but she still felt its warmth. Her phone buzzed, a text from her lawyer confirming that Clem's access to their accounts had been frozen and the locks on the house had been changed. Agnes Peterson approached hesitantly.
Joan, what will you do now?
Now? Now I start over. At 67, I'm going to learn who I am without him.
That must be terrifying.
No, what's terrifying is living a lie. The truth, even when it hurts, is freedom.
The community center slowly emptied, leaving Joan standing among the scattered sheet music and overturned chairs. The concert hadn't gone as planned, but it had accomplished something more important than raising money. It had raised the truth, sung it loud and clear for everyone to hear. And for the first time in months, Joan felt like she could truly breathe. 6 months had passed since the concert that changed everything. Joan stood in her new apartment, smaller than the house she'd shared with Clem, but entirely hers. Morning light streamed through windows she'd chosen, illuminating furniture she'd selected. creating shadows in spaces that held no painful memories. Her phone rang. Bernice's name appeared on the screen.
Have you seen the morning paper?
Not yet. More news about the trial?
They've been sentenced. Clem got 3 years. Dolores got 5 because of her previous offenses. They're also ordered to pay full restitution.
Joan sat down slowly. 3 years. After 45 years of marriage, her husband would spend the next 3 years in prison.
How do you feel about it? I don't know, relieved, sad, empty, all of it at once?
That sounds about right. Listen, there's something else. The choir wants to talk to you about something important. Can you come to rehearsal tonight?
That evening, Joan entered the community center for the first time since relocating to her apartment. The choir members stood and applauded as she walked in. Harold Morrison, the choir president, approached with a warm smile.
Joan, we've been discussing our future. We've had 3 temporary conductors, but none of them felt right. We'd like you to consider taking the position permanently.
Me? But I'm not trained as a conductor.
You've been teaching music for 40 years. You know every piece in our repertoire. More importantly, you showed us what real leadership looks like when you stood on that stage and sang the truth.
The choir members nodded in agreement. Agnes Peterson spoke up.
We've already voted. It was unanimous. Please, Joan, help us rebuild.
Joan looked at their faces, these people who had become her true family. She thought about the bitter woman she'd almost become, consumed by revenge. That woman had served her purpose, but it was time to let her go.
All right, yes, let's rebuild together.
3 months later, Joan stood at the podium for the choir's first major performance under her direction. The auditorium was full again. The community had rallied around them after the scandal, donations pouring in to replace what had been stolen. She'd chosen the program carefully, songs of resilience, hope, and new beginnings. No more eternal vows or promises of forever. Instead, music that celebrated the present moment, the courage to change, the strength to survive. As she raised her baton, Joan caught sight of someone in the 3rd row. Sarah McBride, Dolores' sister, had come. They'd corresponded a few times, Sarah struggling with guilt over her sister's crimes, Joan assuring her that family wasn't responsible for individual choices. The concert was a triumph. The choir's voices blended perfectly, their trust in Joan evident in every note. When it ended, the standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Afterward, at the reception, Joan was surrounded by well-wishers. Mervyn Taggart approached, no longer the reporter, but just a community member enjoying the music.
You've transformed them. They've never sounded better.
They transformed themselves. I just gave them the space to do it.
Later, as Joan was preparing to leave, she found an envelope on her car windshield. Inside was a letter in handwriting she knew too well. She unfolded it carefully. Clem's words sprawled across the page. Joan, I know I have no right to contact you. The divorce papers were clear about that. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Not just sorry I got caught, but truly sorry for what I became. Prison gives you time to think. Maybe too much time. I threw away something precious for something worthless. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that the man you married did exist once before greed and stupidity destroyed him. Be happy. You deserve it. See, Joan stood by her car for a long moment, the letter trembling in her hands. Then, deliberately, she tore it into pieces and let them scatter in the wind. Clem's apologies, like his promises, were just words carried away on the breeze. A year after the scandal, Joan conducted the choir in their most ambitious performance yet, a joint concert with the City Symphony. She'd written 3 original arrangements for the program, discovering a talent for composition she'd never had time to explore during her marriage. The morning of the symphony concert, Joan visited the cemetery where her parents were buried. She'd been coming more often lately, finding peace among the old headstones.
I'm conducting the symphony tonight, Mom. Can you believe it? Your daughter, who you said was too quiet to amount to much, standing in front of 100 musicians?
The wind rustled through the trees, and Joan could almost hear her mother's voice. I was wrong about many things, dear. I'm glad you proved me wrong. That evening, as Joan took the podium in the grand concert hall, she saw her life spread before her. Not the life she'd planned, but the one she'd claimed for herself. The orchestra waited for her cue, the choir stood ready, the audience held its breath. She raised her baton, and music filled the space, not a song of betrayal or revenge, but something new she'd composed called Second Spring. It was about renewal, about flowers that bloom after the harshest winter, about voices that grow stronger after being silenced. During the performance, Joan experienced a moment of perfect clarity. She was 68 years old, divorced, living alone for the first time in her life. She'd lost her marriage, her home, her sense of security, but she'd gained something more valuable, herself. The concert ended to thunderous applause. As Joan took her bow, she saw Bernice in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Luella stood clapping with more energy than someone her age should possess. The choir members beamed with pride. At the after-party, Harold Morrison pulled Joan aside.
The Symphony Board wants to discuss making this collaboration permanent. They're impressed with your arrangements and your conducting.
At my age?
Especially at your age. You bring depth, experience, and authenticity they can't find in younger candidates.
As the evening wound down, Joan stepped outside for air. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, then noticed it was from the federal prison. Against her better judgment, she opened it. It was from Dolores. I underestimated you. That was my mistake. You were never the weak old woman I thought you were. You were playing a longer game than I ever imagined. I'm almost impressed. Enjoy your victory. D. Joan deleted the message without responding. Dolores still didn't understand. It had never been a game. It had been survival. 2 years passed. Joan's life settled into new rhythms, conducting, composing, teaching private students. She dated occasionally, nothing serious, just companionship without the weight of eternal vows. Then came unexpected news. Clem had died in prison. Heart attack, the officials said. Quick and probably painless. Joan attended the funeral, standing at the back of the nearly empty chapel. His brother was there, a few cousins, no one else. The man who'd once been so charming, so vital, had died alone and forgotten. She didn't approach the casket. There was nothing left to say to the stranger lying there. Instead, she left quietly and drove to the community center where her choir was waiting for rehearsal.
Let's work on something joyful today, something that celebrates being alive, being present, being honest with ourselves and each other.
As their voices rose in harmony, Joan felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was no longer Joan Wallace, betrayed wife. She was Joan Wallace, conductor, composer, survivor, and teacher. The story could have ended there, but life rarely provides such neat conclusions. 3 months after Clem's death, Joan received a package. Inside was a safety deposit box key and a note from Clem's lawyer. Clem had hidden away $50,000. Money he'd skimmed from his business years before. Money Joan never knew existed. It was legally hers now. Joan held the key, thinking of all the years she'd scraped by on a teacher's salary while he had this hidden. Another betrayal, even from beyond the grave. She could have kept it, used it for herself. Instead, she established a music scholarship fund for local students who couldn't afford lessons. Every dollar of Clem's hidden money would go toward nurturing young voices, helping them sing their truths before anyone could silence them. 5 years after the concert that changed everything, Joan stood once again on the community center stage. This time, she wasn't performing, but receiving an award. Citizen of the Year for her contributions to the arts. As she accepted the plaque, Joan looked out at the audience. Bernice was there, of course, still her strongest supporter. Luella, now 80, but still singing in the choir. The scholarship recipients, young faces bright with possibility. Even Sarah McBride had come, having moved to town to start fresh, free from her sister's shadow.
Thank you for this honor. 5 years ago, I thought my life was over. I discovered my husband's betrayal, lost my marriage, and had to rebuild from nothing. But sometimes destruction is necessary for creation. Sometimes we need to lose everything to find out who we really are.
She paused, seeing nods of understanding in the crowd.
I learned that it's never too late to use your voice, never too late to stand up for truth, never too late to begin again. The music doesn't end just because one song does. There's always another verse, another melody, another chance to sing.
The applause was warm and genuine. As Joan returned to her seat, she thought about the woman she'd been that night 5 years ago. Standing on stage with rage in her heart and revenge in her voice. That woman had been necessary, but she was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and surprisingly content. After the ceremony, Joan walked home alone, humming a new composition she was working on. The evening was mild, spring arriving early this year. Gardens were beginning to bloom, the air sweet with possibility. Her phone rang, an unknown number from New York.
Ms. Wallace, this is the Manhattan Symphony. We've heard your compositions, and we're wondering if you'd consider a guest conducting position this fall.
Joan stopped walking, her breath catching. Manhattan. At 72 years old, they wanted her in Manhattan.
I'll need to think about it.
Of course. Take your time. We believe you have something unique to offer, a perspective on music and life that our audiences need to hear.
After the call ended, Joan stood on the sidewalk, laughing. Life, it seemed, wasn't finished surprising her. The betrayal that should have destroyed her had instead revealed her. The voice she'd used for revenge had become an instrument of creation. She thought of Clem, rotting in his prisoner's grave. Of Dolores, still serving her sentence. They'd tried to steal her future, but had only freed her to find it herself. Joan Wallace, 72 years old, divorced, betrayed, and transformed, walked home with spring in her step. Tomorrow she would call New York back. Tomorrow she would say yes. Because the music wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. Thank you for listening to this complete audiobook. If this story touched you, please subscribe and like this video to support more quality audiobook content. Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Hit the bell for notifications about our next story. See you in the next audiobook. Next.